Lieutenant Sophia Blackwood stood at the observation deck of the ESS Hawthorne, Earth's most advanced research vessel. Her dark eyes studied the approaching Draconian warship, its obsidian hull gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. As the ship's lead xenobiologist, she should have been thrilled about humanity's first official contact with the Draconians. Instead, her stomach churned with apprehension. "Nervous, Lieutenant?" Captain James Harrison asked, joining her at the window. His weathered face reflected decades of space exploration, but even he couldn't hide his unease. "Just wondering how many of our protocols they'll ignore," Sophia replied, adjusting her uniform. The Draconians had a reputation for viewing other species as beneath them, and their recent expansion into human space had been anything but peaceful. The Draconian ship dwarfed the Hawthorne, its massive frame casting a shadow over their vessel. High Commander Krovax had requested this meeting, though requested was a polite term for the implied threat in his message. The meeting chamber was neutral territory, a specially designed room for first contact scenarios. Sophia stood with Captain Harrison and their small delegation as the Draconian party entered. High Commander Krovax towered over them, his scaled skin shifting between deep purple and midnight black, a sign of his elite status. His amber eyes fixed on Sophia immediately. "So," Krovax rumbled, mandibles clicking in what Sophia recognized as amusement, "this is humanity's great scientific mind. The one who dared publish a paper suggesting draconian biology evolved from lesser reptilian species." Sophia kept her voice steady. "My research speaks for itself, Commander. The genetic markers in your species show clear evolutionary paths." Silence. Krovax's tail lashed violently. "You dare suggest we descended from primitive creatures? The Draconian Empire was born of the stars themselves." Captain Harrison stepped forward. "Commander, we're here to discuss scientific cooperation, not debate evolutionary theory." But Krovax wasn't finished. He moved with frightening speed, closing the distance to Sophia. "Your species' arrogance ends now. I challenge this presumptuous female to prove her worth. Either she faces our trials of combat, or we consider this an act of war." The room erupted in chaos. Security officers raised weapons. Draconian warriors hissed, but Sophia's voice cut through it all. "I accept." "Lieutenant." "Absolutely not," Harrison protested, but Sophia raised her hand. "With respect, Captain, we both know they'll use any refusal as an excuse for war. At least this way, we control the variables." Krovax's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile. "Tomorrow, then, in our arena, we'll see how well your evolution serves you against a superior species." As the Draconians left, Harrison turned to Sophia. "You realize he's going to try to kill you." Sophia watched Krovax's retreating form, her mind already analyzing Draconian weak points. "Probably. But he's forgetting something important." "What's that?" "Humans didn't get to the stars by being easy to kill." Back in her quarters, Sophia reviewed everything known about Draconian physiology. Their strength and armor were impressive, but their joints were vulnerable, and their aggression could be used against them. She spent hours practicing combat sequences, knowing tomorrow would test every skill she'd acquired during her military training. What no one expected, not even Krovax, was that their conflict would attract the attention of something ancient and terrible, something that had been watching humanity and the Draconians for a very long time. As Sophia prepared for combat, a shadow moved through the void between ships, its form barely visible against the darkness of space. Tomorrow would bring more than a test of species. It would bring a revelation that would change the galaxy forever. The Draconian arena was a massive amphitheater carved into their warship's heart. Thousands of scaled warriors filled the stands, their combined hisses creating an eerie backdrop. Sophia stood in the arena's center, wearing a lightweight combat suit. Across from her, Krovax flexed his claws, each one sharp enough to slice through steel. "Human," he announced, voice booming, "prepare to learn your place in the cosmos." "Strange," Sophia replied, settling into a defensive stance. "I was about to say the same thing." The battle began explosively. Kovacs charged, expecting to end the fight in seconds. But Sophia had studied well. She ducked under his swing, using his momentum against him. Her elbow struck his side joint, a weak point in draconian armor. Kovacs roared in pain and surprise. The crowd fell silent. No one had ever drawn first blood against their commander. But before either could strike again, the arena's lights flickered. A chill spread through the air, and a figure materialized between them. It stood humanoid in shape, but its form seemed to absorb light, wrapped in what looked like living darkness. Interesting. The figure spoke, its voice resonating in their minds. Two species, each believing themselves superior. Perhaps a true test is in order. "What are you?" Kovacs demanded. "I am the observer," it replied, "one who watches evolution's dance across the cosmos. And you both require enlightenment." The observer's revelation was shocking. Both humans and draconians were part of a grand experiment, seeded by ancient beings called the precursors. But another force threatened both species, the Void Collective, entities that consumed civilizations. "Your petty conflict blinds you," the observer explained, showing them visions of worlds being devoured by darkness. "The void approaches. Only united can you hope to survive." Sophia and Kovacs found themselves fighting side by side against shadow creatures that materialized in the arena. Their cooperation was awkward at first, but necessity forced adaptation. Sophia's agility complemented Kovacs' strength. "Perhaps," Kovacs admitted between battles, "there is something to be said for evolutionary advantages." "And maybe," Sophia replied, dodging a shadow tendril, "some species really were touched by the stars." The final battle took place in the space between ships. The Void Collective had arrived, their dark ships threatening both human and draconian vessels. Sophia and Kovacs led a joint team into the heart of the Void flagship. "Interesting choice," the observer commented, appearing beside them. "Most species fall to infighting when faced with extinction." "We're full of surprises," Sophia answered, as she worked to overload the Void ship's core. Kovacs defended her position, his newfound respect evident in every move. "Perhaps this is true evolution, learning to rise above our prejudices." The explosion that followed lit up the sector like a newborn star. When it faded, the Void ships were gone, and both human and draconian vessels remained intact. In the aftermath, Sophia and Kovacs stood again in the neutral meeting chamber, this time as equals. "Your research paper," Kovacs rumbled. "Perhaps it could use some draconian input. A collaborative study on both our species' origins." Sophia smiled. "I'd like that. Though we should probably leave out the part about the cosmic entity and shadow monsters." "Agreed. Some truths the galaxy isn't ready for." The observer watched unseen as both ships departed, heading toward a future neither species had imagined possible. Evolution, it seemed, worked in mysterious ways. Peace treaties were signed, cultural exchanges began, and a new era of cooperation dawned. And if sometimes shadows moved strangely in the space between stars, well, that was a challenge for another day.